What's up? What's up? What's up? Okay, so here I am. I'm in Irving, Texas. I decided to come out here and check out Synergy Learning System is doing a training with Doug Wyatt. Doug is what I describe Doug as a thunderstorm of a person. Literally a thunderstorm of a person. And we met a couple of years ago at was it Service World Expo?
Service World
Expo.
One of those get-togethers afterwards, in Tampa.
And he said, Ever, I was told that you were the guy I had to talk to. I have to tell you about something and I need to talk to you. And for like an hour, I heard about Doug's story and I've been intrigued with Doug. Doug has done, tremendous things. So let me just explain. There's about 30 people in a room over here. They're all eating lunch right now. And Doug took, 15, 20 minutes to talk about kind of what this journey has been really. So he's training these people. I sat in this class for 1 hour, and like, I'm on fire. I'm ready to go. So Synergy Learning Systems has put together I can't even explain it, like a suite of learning that is unlike most things that you've learned. And so I'm actually really excited. So Doug, you flew in 2 nights ago, even though the training started today.
That's right. Yeah. Standing for us. Everett, thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
You are an amazing icon in the industry. I mean that. Sorry, I'm a little hoarse today.
Well, you talk too much.
Well, I do. Too much, a lot, over talk, overshare, overtrain, whatever you might look at that as. You mentioned coming in early. I had a training opportunity years ago where I traveled the country. We did 2 events a week. We trained 1,000 companies and 7,000 blue-collar tradesmen, HVAC and plumbing technicians mostly. And I swore to myself, if I ever got back on the training side after having my second stint as a contractor in Colorado, I said, I'm not going to be the guy that has to race into events, risking not being there on time. And I'm not going to be the guy that races out. Now, that works for some people, and I don't have a bad word to say about any of it. But I'll tell you this, when I schedule an event, I want to come in and absolutely, from an old basketball athletic term, I'm going to leave it all on the floor. So we get in on a Sunday afternoon for a Tuesday event.
Yeah.
Gives us a chance to kind of get situated in town. If there happen to be any type of delays with airlines, weather delays, now we've got a full day to make good on that. What I don't want to do is have other people fly in from all over the country and then they're here for training and myself and my team don't show up. So that just helps us to curb that. Plus, I only do a speaking event every other week. So 26 max a year. We usually do 3 days, 4 days. Plus, then you mentioned lots of additional training. We do follow-up, ongoing virtual training. So thousands of videos.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed. So this is a tiny little book that Doug put together for Synergy Learning Systems. It's, the content in here is nuts. And I don't know where you get your passion. I mean, you're just a passionate dude. Where does it come from?
I grew up in, I grew up in Southwest Missouri, and I just grew up dirt poor, kind of in a good old country redneck. And as I kind of learned the ways of the world through junior high and high school, I was like, I want more. And I always played sports growing up. And my thing became, as I started playing sports, it wasn't about winning or losing, although I love to win and I might maybe hate to lose. It was about wanting to. And I've shared that with my kids. I mean, my daughter's been a 4-year college athlete, won the Conference Leadership Award, played at Missouri Baptist a number of years ago. And I always shared with her, I said, it's not about winning, it's about wanting to, right? And so my passion comes from ultimate preparedness. How is it if you're going to get in front of the room, if you're going to get on the phones, if you're going to run service calls, sales leads, if you're in HVAC, plumbing, windows, doors, home performance, home remodel, restoration, whatever it is, no matter what it is that we're influencing customers to choose us. For me, it's about sales is 3 things. Number 1, passion. Sales is about a transference of emotion. We're creating emotion every time we speak. And then it's about an earning of trust and a lowering of risk. Either risk is up and trust is down, or trust is up and risk is down. And that's going to be about how we communicate, the words we choose to share, everything that we do to present, the way we look, the way we act, the way we smell, right? The way we're groomed. If our shirt's tucked in, every detail matters. And that's either going to go to help us earn that customer, earn that trust, or it's going to move us away from.
It's funny, in the 1 hour that I spent in there, you covered that. And I've taken every sales class from here to Timbuktu. And it's funny because, at some point in time during the journey, heard something like that, right?
Yeah.
Just you just there's so much in the pot, like the stew. It's like sometimes you forget some of the ingredients, and you're like, oh, right, that's an ingredient. Yeah. So super. And one thing that I want to say, and I want you to comment on this, right? I think that you're like a cerebral person, right?
Okay.
And I think the way you train is very cerebral. So I actually view this less in like, again, I think this is my opinion. I think this is really less about like, oh, it's call center, sales training, operations, sales, I think this is more, it's training people how to think.
Yeah.
It's
a great point.
It's an exercise of you talk about neural pathways. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, if you talk about neural pathways, you and I, we've read a lot of books. You mentioned that you've been to a lot of training. Sometimes we go to so much, we forget the implementation component, right? You and I know we're fans of like Zig Ziglar and Stephen Covey. And I started going to things like Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins. And so when I think about neural pathways, I think about the creation of habits, right? Neural pathways in the brain. We've all heard that it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? Typically what I'm saying is, hey, the first thing that we have to do is say, what do we stand for? What are our core values? And that comes down to influencing with integrity. I like to say that I'm going to live my life and train my companies and call centers, tech training, sales training, whatever it might be. We've got to think about how are we serving others with honor, character, integrity. So that's the first thing. We got to say, what is our process built upon? Then we got to think about how do we get ourselves back in that mode every single day? Whether the phone's ringing or we're knocking on a door, we're stepping into an entryway, wherever that is, we've got to think about every new call is our next most important call, right? So that's about, that's about creating new habits if we're not happy with our results. Listen, if you're happy with exactly where you are, then there's no changes that are needed. But even if you're happy with where you are, we got to figure out a way to muster up the courage to be just as good on every call every day as we were the day before. And if we're not happy where we are, then I like to say, we've all heard the thing that they say, what's the definition of insanity, Everett? What have we all heard? It's that we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. I have a different definition, and that is finding something that works and stop doing it. So my goal when we come in and do live events is, of course, to provide training, but it's really not about the training. It doesn't matter how good the training is. If we don't implement that when we get back to the facility, when we get back in our van, when we get back and serve customers, what's going to matter is what do we do that next day, the next week, the next month, the next year. Doesn't matter how good the training is that we put our team through. If it doesn't get implemented and implemented consistently over the long term.
What's your silver bullet? If you had one, I know there is none, but to keep that consistency, because that's the biggest thing. People just drop off. They just don't do these things consistently, and then they don't create success because they don't do it over and over. They do it once, they get trained. Oh, I'm on fire. Okay. They go back, they do it, and then it's
All right. There is no silver bullet, but I do think we kind of have a couple of what we could call like mind hacks. We've got to get leverage on ourselves. So that kind of makes me think about a book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
Love that.
Whether it's that book.
I just finished that book. That's so crazy. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, whether it's Simon Sinek or something else, we've got to leverage ourselves. We've got to start to think about what matters most in our life. The biggest thing that if you go and you look at the studies of nursing homes and everybody else and anybody that's on their deathbed and they say, what was your regret? And the regret is typically that they didn't try the thing. They didn't stick to it. They didn't have that grit, and that they were concerned about what other people would think. So what I say is the first thing is we've got to get leverage on ourselves and stop thinking that we have enough time. We don't. We've got to make a decision. What's really important to us? But the challenge is it's like this. You're a guy that is incredibly buff, Everett. Like you look like you could lift a house, right? Here's the thing. Everett can go and join a gym, right? The gym could have invested in all of the training, the equipment, the lease, the space, the lighting, the utilities, the membership plan, the software, and then you join the gym. But Everett, if you go to the gym, like we're here at a 3-day event, and you go for 3 days and you absolutely exhaust yourself, but you stop going after 3 days, what's going to happen if you start going back to the drive-through, you start drinking 64 ounces of soda, and then you stop also working out, doing your weightlifting, your cardio, your stretching, whatever that might be, right? The 3 days you were just going to be in pain, and you're not going to get the results. So here's the hack. First, we got to leverage get leverage on ourselves and think about what is our why, right?
Yeah.
Second, we've got to write out our goals in present tense. I leverage some things that I learned from Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey. I've combined those. I talk about these in terms of legacy statements, where we do a very specific thing where we have people at the end of this event where we're going to write out our goals. We're going to get committed to what we stand for, who we're going to be, and how we're going to get there. And then we have to mentally prepare ourselves that in our worst days, that if we don't go to the gym, so to speak, if we don't do the deal in the van, in the car, at the house, on the phones, how do we get back on track? And that's where we have to gain leverage. First, we have to understand why it's so important to us and what we're working so hard for. 2, we got to write that out in present tense. And then 3, when we start to get off track, how do we get back on track? So that's one of the things that we work on. It's so much more about the culture that we develop in our business, in our lives, with our families. And then we've got to surround ourselves with those that are helping us get there. A lot of things, you're right. There is no magic wand. There's no magic elixir. There's not one thing. But those are things we're working on as well. Because it doesn't matter how good our scripts are, another trainer's scripts are, if when we get back, if the training's not utilized.
I'm guessing that you keep, like, in your companies, like your organization, I'm guessing you keep people very accountable, because you keep yourself accountable.
Yeah.
And I can see this like fire, right? And
Yeah.
you're driven and you're competitive. Yeah. And my question would be, do you think that, have you been in a situation where you've off-put somebody because of how?
Absolutely.
Because yeah.
Oh
okay.
yeah. Probably
Yeah.
probably there's some people in there. I mean,
and what do you do? What do you do in that situation when you know you off-put somebody? Because, and I do this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, number one thing is we can't be all things to all people, right? I mean, I am me. I like to think that I'm authentic and I'm just going to be me. There's definitely things that we can do to curb some of that so that we don't rub somebody the wrong way so that they just tune you out. But I am passionate. I like to say that, to me, life is about ultimate preparedness. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So I study who's coming to this event. I always look at who are they? Where are they from? What's the role that they play? I mean, some of those people today, they're like, oh my gosh, how did this guy know my first name, my last name, where I live, and all this stuff? And it's like, if I'm going to come in and somebody's going to invest 3 days with us in a room, I'm going to take the time to go in and invest the time to figure out who they are so that I can guard against that off-putting thing as you describe it. But what I'm going to do is go in there and listen. I like to say that I'm about 90% teddy bear and about 10% grizzly bear. You could also say that Doug is about 90% hug and about 10% thug, right? Sometimes we just need a boot so far up the rectum, right, that somebody's like, whoa, that kind of took me off guard. But when I have an event where it's 3 days, it's not so much like a 60 or 90-minute keynote, right? Like sometimes we have to adjust some of the things that we might share in 60 or 90 minutes. But when we have 3 days, I mean, we're going to be in here 10 hours a day, 3 straight days, that's 30 hours. We're only into this thing about 5 hours.
Yeah.
I've got about 25 hours right now to recover.
Yeah.
But I think what I noticed in the room, every time we come in, it's like that first 4 to 5 hours is a warm up.
Yeah.
And people start to realize this is not what I was expecting. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
We kind of got to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Even in the hour that I sat in there, I thought the same thing. I'm like, yeah, this is really not. So, okay. So now high energy. Yep. You're infectious. I say this, right? You put together a tiny little training manual.
For that, there's one like that for call center, about 250 pages.
I know, it's insane.
Then there's one for text. There's one for sales. There's one for leadership. There's also one for HVAC. There's one for plumbing. And now we're working on a more generalized program where we're teaching, no matter what industry you're in, to do that. But here's the thing, in answer to your other question, Everett, and sorry if I interrupted. I know we're kind of on a time crunch. We got a timer counting down in there. We get people right back in those seats. We have invested the last 3 years, we'll call it the basement. We've got a master of videography, 11 video editors around the world. We've created thousands of very polished, very professional movies. They're literally miniature training movies to engage the audience. They're interactive. There's a complete scoring system, because here's what I know. It doesn't matter how passionate I am, how excited I am. Some of us on January 1, we get excited to go to the gym. What do the gyms look like, though, by February 15th, March 15th? They're empty and all the same people are back there. What I know is if we don't inspire the room to make positive change for themselves, their family, their business, their children, their spouse, if we can't inspire that, it doesn't matter what we say or what's in that book. If they don't go back and figure out the inspiration to put their nose back in there and feel like it's a worthwhile endeavor to either work towards mastery or master it. So what we did is we put together a 1-year program and we create a facilitators program for the service managers, the sales managers, the leadership, the office manager. We create the written assignments. We create these books, and then we create ongoing training. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of videos where we're leading them to mastery. I call it a forced 1-year learning path. If you will keep pushing print, keep pushing play, and keep having your meeting, those 3 things, a year from now, you'll look up amazed at where you've been.
I have one more question, and this is a big one. Obviously, it's a noisy space in general, right? And there's a lot of information that comes from different directions, right? You've got a lot of different training philosophies, and you've got a lot of different customer service philosophies, and companies run a little bit differently. Now, obviously, you can always say, well, I'll take what I can from this, right? But how do you combat or deal or address, like, okay, well, this company is a part of Nexstar, or this company is a part of SGI, or this company has done this small business group, and this person has ACA, and this person has a, what do you do?
Well, number one, I think it's a balance, right? We've got to think about who do we resonate with, who's going to resonate with us, right? What company best aligns with us. But the one thing that I see that a lot of us in the space make the mistake of is we go too wide instead of going deep, right? Like, Everett, you've won national awards for sales, and you do training and on-sites and all that stuff. If somebody just brought you in and then said, every day we're going to work on what Everett shared with us, their life will never be the same in a very positive way, right?
Right.
I think one of the challenges is, and listen, we're all going to be out at some of these conferences here in the next few weeks, right? All over the country. They're amazing. I think the biggest challenge that we all face, especially as business owners and everybody else that attends these, is there's so many different sources, and then we kind of try to put it all together. My best thing is any of the trainers out there that are doing a great job, if we just went really deep, right? If we just continue to drill down and said for 6 months or for 1 year, we're going to master everything that Everett shares in your training program, man, I'm telling you, then you'll have the keys to the kingdom. And I'm not saying that sometimes we don't need some additional inspiration.
You ask for that commitment from the people that come on board?
Yeah, I mean, we offer a 1-year training program where we teach everything, where we can integrate everything from your call center to your technicians, your service department, your sales department, your leadership. But I would also say, listen, if you were with one of the other big companies, I mean, we have a family of companies here, great trainers, many of them friends of mine. I'm not here to say, hey, my training's the only one. I'm just saying, man, plug into somebody, right? And then let's say that you had one company for your call center training, one trainer for your tech training, one trainer for your sales, one trainer for your leadership. Great. Let's just make sure, here's the key. Doesn't matter. I mean, yes, you could say, well, this one's different, or this person focuses on this. The number one thing that I believe is that every single day, every single week, we've got to work on getting a little bit better. So what we do is we say, hey, we don't expect you to master the entire program in 3 days. That's not, that would be like saying, hey, Everett, we're going to teach a fitness routine. So we're going to come in and we're going to bring all the gym equipment, or we're going to meet down at the gym. And for 8 or 10 hours a day, we're going to go hard. We're going to hit the treadmill. We're going to hit the elliptical. We're going to hit all the free weights, all the Nautilus stuff. And for 3 days, we're going to work our tails off. We're going to show them how everything is done. You know what? By the time we walk out of here on Thursday night, we're not going to be anything but exhausted and pissed. And tomorrow we're going to be sore, and we're probably going to say, I'm not going back to the gym. So here's what I'm going to say about training. It's no different than going to the gym. We've got to make those small decisions in those moments, day after day, week after week. And if we expect to go to a 3-day training event or a conference and walk out of there completely changed, we're fooling ourselves. It's going to be about.
But people do get hyped up after those events. Absolutely. Like I've been in those rooms where I'm like, oh, Tony, yes, you know.
And 2 things happen, Everett. I love those events. And listen, we've been speakers of that event.
But it's not lasting. It's not lasting, and that continuous.
This bump.
But Doug, this is so important though, because I think that if you bring a philosophy, which you do, like, I don't care, like. I think you're right. You got to go deep.
That's okay.
I think you got to go. I think you have to go really deep, and you just follow one philosophy and just see where it goes. Because if you're so scattered and you're not subscribed to like a philosophy, it gets messy. It gets hairy.
I'll give you an example. Let's just say this. What I find in every event that I do, I say, what's your biggest challenges? So we're in here. This is a call center event this week. And I say, what are your biggest challenges? And they say, oh, tire kickers, price shoppers, people that say they want a ballpark over the phone and all this. And I say, well, what is the exact response that you say? Well, most people's response is, well, we don't get pricing over the phone. We got to send somebody out. I say, well, how's that working for you? And then we start playing calls from companies around the country. And it's like we lose call after call after call. Yeah. And I'm not saying to give pricing over the phone all willy-nilly. But what I would say is, if you could identify the 3 biggest challenges in your company, in your calls, with your company culture, with the relationships between your field staff and your office staff, your install staff, your service staff, If you could identify the biggest challenges and every week come in and say, guys, this is what we're working towards. This is what makes us different. So a little bit of a conversation about the culture and how we're a team and we're on the same side. And then I would say this, if your call center is struggling with customers that are tire kickers and all these things, and your service techs and your sales department is struggling with 3 bids, I'm not familiar with your brand. I need to think about it, talk about it, sleep on it, pray about it, talk to my spouse, talk to my neighbor, talk to my cousin. And then you also get hit with price objections and say, can you do it cheaper? My best recommendation is go deep on those. Let's just say one of the number one things, as soon as we start role playing in a sales event, Everett, you and I get hit with this all the time. The number one thing when I say, all right, ask for the order, will you trust me with this or whatever? Every single time, you know what the objection is? You know what it is? People say to us, yeah, I do, but I tell you what, let me think about it. Let me sleep on it. Let me pray about it. Or they go to an unavailable party close where the homeowner.
I got to talk to my neighbor's cousin.
Talk to my neighbor's cousin, nephew. Yeah. They say, I got to talk to my spouse. No, they're not available. And so if we don't know exactly how to handle those, let's say that you had 5 ways to handle, and I got to think about it. Or if you had 5 ways to handle, I got to talk to somebody else about it. And you just practice those 10 things. Your life as a technician, as a salesperson, it goes up
10%, like just by knowing those 5 responses, and then you can address things that ordinary. Yeah, and like so. And I think there's also a shift in how we do business, like the old school way, right? Of like, oh, you know, we don't give prices over the phone, and we don't do this and we don't do that. And it's like, oh yeah, that's not my customer. It's like, well, hey guy, marketing got really, really expensive in the last 10 years.
That's right.
Like we got to change the way we do things. When you said something in the classroom, here's what I thought to myself. Somebody calls in, they're like, oh, what's a price? You know, give me a ballpark price, blah, blah, blah. My first thing that I was going to say was, oh no, what happened? Tell me what's going on, John. Right. John, you say your name was John?
Breathe life into it.
You know what? Let's help you out with this.
Yes.
It's
brilliant.
Right. So that was where my brain went.
The challenge is most of the time, like the calls that we're playing in there that are real calls. These aren't fake. These are real companies, great companies, some of the best in the country. And they've got call center representatives that answer the phone, and the homeowner says, hey, you know, we got this challenge and how much is it? And then we say, oh, the dispatch fee to send somebody out is $49 or $99 or $79 or $120. It doesn't even matter. Oftentimes we're even apologizing and say, well, just so you're aware, there is this.
Sorry.
And then instead of breathing life into it and saying, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that's happening. Can you share a little bit more about what's going on?
Yeah.
And then
let me write down the notes. Let me get it over to the technician. It's only $49 for us to come out. Like there's softer words, and I'm sure you train it in whatever way you do, but the philosophy is the same.
So many different things that we can do. And I would say this, we talk a lot about margins in our business, and we've got to be profitability, right? Like profits for sanity. Right? That's the key. But what I'm talking about is at the margin is where the success is. Meaning in the same 2 minutes, the customer can have a completely different experience. It starts with our mindset, our passion, our servitude, putting ourselves in the shoes of a homeowner that has burst a leak and their basement's flooding, or their garbage disposal is not working, or their HVAC system isn't cooling, or it's not heating. Our responsibility, number one, is to be in the mindset of what would I do if that was my grandmother? With health challenges, with a snowstorm moving in and her furnace isn't working and she's scared. Would I just immediately say, well, just so you're aware, Irene, there is a $49 diagnostic fee to send somebody. She's going to say, oh, okay. We're leading her to believe that she should call around. We're creating conflict.
Yeah.
We got to make this more about servitude, taking care of those people that are on our phones, in front of us, in their entryways, in their primary suites, in their basements, in their attics. We've got to make it more about how do we serve people. And I will say this, one of the things, and I think my job to start the event today over those first 4 or 5 hours, it's like the warm up, right? We have 30 hours, the first 5, we got 25 hours left or so. My responsibility at this event is to start to get the people in the room to start seeing the customers as the people we come to work to serve rather than the people that are creating all the conflict in our lives. Most of the people in those rooms, whether it's service, sales, call centers, they are so frustrated with how homeowners are behaving that they only see them as the challenge. And what I do is I share that it doesn't have to be that way. The way we communicate, the way we show our love and care, the homeowners will start to change. Now, I also believe there's about a third of the market that will never pay us our premium prices and make those investments. Our job is to go through an entire system and process to learn whether they're truly a cheap customer or if they're just doing their, what I call fiduciary responsibility to get the most for the least, which is a major
just because somebody says they're shopping around, but does not mean they're necessarily going to go with the lowest price, or really that's what they care about. And also, maybe somebody has to show them that there is value in going with a better company and going with a better service. And part of that gets dropped all the way through. And I know you got to go.
Well, I want to share one more thing.
Yeah.
You know, I've been on the contracting side twice. Once we won some awards. The second time after going out and training and learning from about 1,000 different business owners like yourself, I started accumulating everything that I'd learned. When I went back on the contracting side the second time, I joined an 18-year-old company, 18 years in business, less than $1 million in revenue, no uniforms. They had an answering machine, not an answering service, 2 white vans. They had no CRM. They were literally like the old Dewey Decimal System with one of those things like at the old school libraries where they're keeping track of customers like that. In 14 months, we won Linux Partner of the Year. It was about absolute accountability. It was about, we're going to dress up. We're going to look the part, act the part, show the part, talk the part. We're going to smell the part. We're going to tuck our shirts in. We're going to wear badges. We're going to drug test. We're going to background check. We're going to run an absolutely amazing, incredible business. And we're going to find people that fit that mold. Then we're going to go to market and share with customers what makes us different. We're going to build that value. But you know what? Here's the thing, Everett. On the outside, everything looked good. We won Linux Partner of the Year in 2016 after 14 months with me just bringing intellectual property, no investment. 14 months later, Linux Partner of the Year. A few months later, we almost closed the doors and went broke. Why? Because in a short window of time, we were not turning a profit. Why? Because we were discounting at the kitchen table when things got slow, and we were waiving diagnostic investments. And so all of a sudden, everybody was getting paid. Everybody in the company got paid. All the van payments, truck payments, everybody got paid. The utilities got paid. The software got paid. You know who didn't get paid? Supply houses and business owners. But all the team thought everything was great, right? And then we almost closed our doors. We got cut off at our 2 major, Linux Partner of the Year, and they cut us off, right? We were the #1 Daikin Fit dealer in the Rocky Mountain region. They cut us off. We got behind with everybody over 90 days, and they said, you're too much of a risk. So what I did in that year is we went back, we went back to the basics, and we said, this is going to be one of the hardest things we've ever done, but we're not going to discount. We're not going to discount $1 or 1 point, not a percentage. We're not going to waive a diagnostic. And so the processes that we teach, build the culture, the value, the servitude, and then the wording, the mindset, everything that we do is created not to rip people off or overcharge. Everything that we share at Synergy is about how to help business owners achieve the life that they imagined without having to be the cheap company and never discounting. I proved in my own life and business that you didn't have to discount. Is it easy? No, it's going to be one of the hardest things you ever do. It's probably going to take about 1 year. That's why we created a 1-year path to mastery. But I will say this, is it possible? It's absolutely possible. We almost closed our doors in 2017. We got back and focused on our KPIs, never waived a diagnostic, never discounted a job. And like a phoenix from the ashes, we came back that next year, paid off all that debt, and won Linux Partner of the Year in 2018.
Yeah.
It's a story of proof. It's nothing to do with me. It was about that I went in, communicated a vision, and said, if you believe that we have to be cheap, we have to discount, we have to match others' prices, as much as I love you, this isn't the right fit. This isn't going to be the place. 4 straight years, our guy was the Linux salesman, was the Linux salesman of the year for the Denver district, which covers like a 6-state region.
Everybody had tons of 5-star reviews and everybody loved him. Yeah. It's just a matter of finding, for sure.
By the way, since you mentioned that, we've been in this a long time.
By the way, he set a timer that said he had to be done at a specific time. It was so funny because he's like, I have 1 minute after the timer.
And now here we are. All right, here's what I will say.
Oh, no, you stay as long as you want.
Everything about holding margin is about what I call the grandmother rule. If you wouldn't recommend it to your very own grandmother that you love and adore, not some old crotchety grandma that you can't stand, smells bad, and whatever, a grandma that you love, that you would take arms for, that you would protect. If you wouldn't recommend it to your very own family member, if you wouldn't recommend it to your very own grandmother that is counting on you to provide her great advice and consultation, don't recommend it to your homeowner. But what I am also saying is we got to believe it in our heart that when we set our pricing strategy and we say, this is what I would need to have the vans, to have the software, to provide the jobs, to do the 401ks, to have the health insurance,
give your guys benefits,
to have Christmas bonuses. When we decide what our pricing is at that moment, every day, every moment, everything that we have to do is being geared towards commanding that investment from every one of our customers. If we will do that, and we will do that day by day, week by week, month by month for an entire year, we can build the business of our dreams, but it's going to be one of the hardest things we've ever done. I'll tell you what's even harder, going broke. I'll tell you, it's even harder when you can't pay your team what you know that they're worth. When you have guys saying, hey, I can't make it here. I got to go work somewhere else. I love you. I wish I could work here, but I'm not making the money. You don't have the calls. Those things are even harder.
Mm.
So what I would say is we've got to block schedule the time to work on our training every single week, every single day. And that's what we're trying to do to help contractors, dealers, technicians, call centers, everyone across the board, so that they have one succinct program where everything fits together and everybody's on the same page, working towards the same goals.
Dude. Like I said, you're a thunderstorm of a person.
And it means so much. I have followed your career, and you are an absolute force to be reckoned with. Listen, you're acting like I'm it. You are the thing.
Doug, let's not even go there.
Man. Sales podcast, man. I'm telling you, this thing, you're changing lives. Man.
Oh man,
I love it. I'm going to listen to every episode. I always listen to things twice because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. But man, I'm telling you, you're doing big things.
I appreciate you. I bet you this one's going to get a whole lot of people fired up. So I hope it goes. I'm excited. Actually, I want to talk to Bryce. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will. I just want to apologize too. A lot of times we speed up whoever we're listening to. They're probably going to have to slow this one down because the words permitted on this. I don't always talk this fast. You just saw me, but I'm like, okay, we got like 20 minutes. Let's rock and roll. And then I'm trying to get a bunch out there. But
the funny part, Doug, is that, now that you got all this out of the way, you have an entire episode, an entire hour and a half episode, 90 minutes that
we're doing that next week, right?
That's already scheduled. This was just, you're doing a training. What are you doing? Now your story comes next week.
Okay.
And I'm excited about it because
I didn't do enough to ruin it.
Oh no.
So,
no,
okay.
no. I think
I'm still going to come back on.
I think your interview with Rilla went like 3-4 hours.
Yeah. Sebastian, I went out to New York City and Sebastian had me in there in the Rilla labs and we just got to talking. Sebastian, man, he's got incredible energy. And before you know it, we look up and Will's like, we should probably wrap it. It's 3 hours. I couldn't believe it. I thought we were like 60, 90 minutes in and Sebastian and I were just going back and forth. So. And by the way, is it okay if I plug Rilla?
Plug anything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about ultimate preparedness and accountability. Just talked with the folks from Rilla. Will called me on Sunday night. I'm probably disclosing this way too soon, but they're planning. I'm coming.
He's coming.
I'm going to be out in the Rilla's planning an event in the spring, and I think they're putting the finishing touches on it. But we're going to be out there. I better not say anymore. Anyway. The Rilla team, man. If you haven't looked into Rilla, I would look into that. If I was back on the contracting side, I would be implementing Rilla in every nook and cranny and corner of my business. It's about ultimate preparedness, and that's all about serving customers better. A byproduct of that is revenue and profits, but it starts with servitude.
Okay. Awesome. Dude,
all right, brother.
Go
Thank
teach
you.
Go
Appreciate you.
Go teach your class. Right. For those of you that actually do not know what Rilla is, because you're outside of, let's say, the industry, it's really a tool, an AI tool, and I'll let you do whatever investigation you want on it. But it's a very innovative product. Can I keep this book, by the way? It's on mine. Very cool. So. Yeah, really interesting to sit through this. A couple of nuggets that I took out. I've really never heard a customer service training, a call center training that talked about neural pathways. So very, very interesting stuff. He actually said there was one thing that he said about increasing trust and lowering risk. I think that's actually psychologically, I think that makes a lot of sense because if you trust somebody and you can lower their risk on something, then you are more likely to make them feel happy, make them feel comfortable with whatever transaction is going to happen, and that doesn't matter whether it's service sales. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you doctor, lawyer. And I think that's the core of it is, do these people trust you? Do you have trust with your client, with your customer, with your patient? I think it's really, really important. And then he talked about transfer of belief. And for me, this is a really big sort of, a really big thing. And I think to a fault, right? Like, I feel like if I've ever been employed somewhere, like I hyper have to believe in what this company is selling, what this company is doing. And if there's ever a stray off or I see somebody or hear something about straying off the moral path in any sort of way, like I'll address it. Like I won't let that sit. And it's just it's not a personality flaw in any way. I think there's some people that can go to work and they can work for a company, and as long as they're writing the checks, they really don't care what, happens, kind of, as long as it's not criminal. They're like, well, it's not criminal. But I don't necessarily know if I feel that way. I kind of feel that the company should have a straight and narrow and stay on that path. And if you're going to say, I'm going to do something, then deliver on that. Don't just say, I'm going to do something, then don't deliver on it, and then still collect money. Because listen, it's like somebody told me once, you go to the drive-through at McDonald's, right? Or some restaurant, whatever. You order something, you go to the window, you give them your money, they give them, the transaction happens, you're supposed to get your food. If you don't get the food that you were supposed to get, then like that wasn't an even transaction, right? There should be a win-win, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? Think win-win. And that's my thought process. So if you have a company, or if you're even, no matter what you're doing, I don't care what you're doing. If you're, selling oranges on the side of the freeway, whatever it is, do what you say you're going to do. Do what you say you're going to do. So I don't think Bryce is actually going to join us out here. I do want to say I'm going to post this as a regular audio podcast as well. And I'm happy a few people came in and out of the chat, but I didn't expect much here. Upcoming on the podcast, Doug is actually going to do an hour and a half session. Doug is, guys, you got to listen to this guy talk. It's incredible. I have the director of sales from CEO Warrior coming up. I have Becca Stamey coming up from Refrigerant Technologies and Viper. I have Jordan Wiggins is coming up, actually. Jordan's a service technician for Billy Go. He's coming up, and incredible guy. I trained with him. And there's also, I've got some other special secret guests coming up. I have this guy, Chuck Staskowitz, coming on. He worked with Micah Gugliaro. So I've got PR firms calling me now for wanting people to come on the show. It's pretty neat, actually. So very excited. I appreciate you all. Is this Bryce here? I was actually just wrapping up, but you want to step up on the? Yeah. Actually, Bryce is gonna join. Look at this. So as far as I know, Bryce is the director at Synergy Systems and Synergy Learning Systems. So also want to just say I posted something earlier today, and it was, there's some developments in my life that have happened recently that have been challenging, but guys, I'm getting a lot of text messages and stuff. You want to sit or you want to stand?
Sure, I'll sit.
So a lot of things happening, and listen, what doesn't make us, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I'm a big believer in God. I'm a big believer in sort of a plan. So I'm not really, maybe I alarmed people I shouldn't have, but yeah, I'm just sharing with you because this has become my forum here. So my personal forum, my business forum has kind of become a little, but yes, Bryce works for Synergy. Doug has all of the employees at Synergy actually wearing really nice outfits. I think there's something to say about that. I think
100%.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah,
we got a little.
Tell everybody who you are, and, what you do.
Does your audience have a nickname for them? Yeah, your audience.
My audience.
Like,
that'd be great. I should.
Yeah, I think you got to figure out maybe
my audience. Yeah.
Just the crazy Everett's or.
Yeah. Well, it's the Sales podcast. I don't think. Yeah, there's really no.
Okay.
I don't really have. That's great though. I'm gonna. Hey, somebody
like the Swifties. Taylor Swift has her Swifties.
somebody should actually come. Somebody should actually come up with.
Yeah.
That. Yeah. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Like I had Micah Gugliaro on. Do you know who that is?
No.
He started Gold Medal Services, and he started CEO Warrior. CEO Warrior.
Yeah.
And so I guess his CEO Warrior, right? They were all like Spartans or Warriors or whatever it was. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
But Bryce, what
Yeah.
the heck? What do you do, man?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on here as well.
Cool, man.
Usually Doug's the one that takes the whole show, but
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
yeah, but he couldn't. There's a trick. He's training right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I actually was just in there. I had to kind of take over the room because you were asking just such great questions for him, and he was just talking about that. But yeah, I'm my name's Bryce. I'm the director of product development at Synergy. Right now, my title really encompasses a lot of different things. I've been with Doug for going on 2 years now. I actually joined. He'll also describe me as the master of videography. And so I initially just joined as a kind of a local videographer to help film the virtual program that he's referenced a few times. And at first, my background's actually in wedding videography. So I had my own wedding videography company since 2018. And initially, I was born in Michigan, and that's where I'm from. And Colorado actually is where I moved to once I got the weddings like really going. I found that I was doing a lot of destination weddings in Aspen and Vail and Breckenridge, at some incredible venues, like just some of the most beautiful places you've ever seen. And so I just was starting to get so much business in Colorado that I moved out there and brought the company with me. Fortunately, I was doing like destination weddings pretty much everywhere at that point, and so it wasn't too difficult of a transfer over, other than the business stuff. But that's really where I initially got to Colorado. That's what took me there. And so I ran into the opportunity with Doug I actually had hired his previous videographer as a second shooter to attend like this huge wedding in Aspen. And we were just on the way there driving in the car, and he's also an insanely talented dude, and he's been doing weddings and video production for years and years. And he got this opportunity in New York to film videos for the Ford Motor Company. And he was filming those fancy commercials with the big pickup trucks driving down dirt roads and the big drone shots, capturing them. And it was his, that's what he was really working for. And so he couldn't pass up on that opportunity. And so he moved out to New York, and we were in the car driving to this wedding, and winter was coming, and it's kind of the slower season for weddings, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
No one wants to get married in the cold. And he was just like, hey man, like, I don't know if you're looking for work or something like that, but I've been working with this guy, Doug, in this company called Synergy, just filming a lot of content for him. I was like, okay, could you tell me a little bit more? And Doug and I always laugh at this story because he literally all he said was, yeah, man, we'll be filming, you would be filming some plumbing videos. I was like, oh.
Right. You're going from
videos. Fancy
pants weddings
to
we're gonna show people how the sewage
yeah. And in my mind too, like this was before I was ever involved in the HVAC or plumbing industry whatsoever. I was just envisioning this dude under the sink, like crack out, looking down, like, okay, I don't know what that means. But I knew my buddy, he was really talented and had a lot of experience. And so I'm like, okay, if he's doing this, I'll at least like field a call and chat with Doug. And, as you can imagine, the conversation with Doug went pretty well. He had actually just wrapped up Service World Expo in Tampa that year. So he was in Florida.
Actually, yeah, I think that's where we met.
Okay. Yeah.
It was there at Louisville. I think it was Tampa, actually.
Yeah. Tampa. And then last year was Phoenix.
Yeah, it was Tampa.
And Orlando this year.
Yeah, it was Tampa.
Yeah. So, and apparently he had just like an insane breakout there. And I still hear people talk about it, but that was right before I showed up. And so, yeah, we really got along well. He's very intense, as you can imagine, and, has very high expectations. But I think I was really in a great position to work with someone like that at that point in my life. I'd already been exposed to the business space, at least somewhat. And I kind of, had some of those same expectations of myself, right? Like when you show up for a wedding, it really taught me the importance of, looking good, playing the part. You can't miss anything. There's no reshoots on wedding days. It's you better be there and you better get the shot. Yeah. Or else you're gonna have a very upset couple. Yeah. And that's
were you drawn to Doug in general, or were you drawn to the opportunity, or like did he immediately kind of bring you in, or was it like, let me try this, let me see how it works?
Yeah.
You guys, because I imagine you guys probably work well together, only because he's so like, animated and so fiery, and you seem like poised and a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would describe our, partnership as kind of, he would be considered the visionary and I'd be the integrator in that scenario. I mean, you hear that a lot,
sure.
I'm sure. And that's really the role that I've evolved into. So when I was first starting, like I said, I was just helping shoot the content, and, based off our continued conversations and how I saw him run his own life. And then, I do see him as a mentor. I see him as a friend and a business partner.
Yeah.
And all of that together has really, put me in the fortunate position to kind of work my way through the company and kind of be his right hand man.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You're doing a lot.
Yeah. More than I ever thought I would be.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot. And,
how cool is that? You know what I hear in my mind, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what I see? I see him like, okay, look, you had a successful company that was not in this industry, right? But he kind of saw whatever it was, and you kind of saw whatever it was.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's not about the fact that you have an MBA in training, and it's not, I don't know if you do or not, but it's not about that. It's just about finding the right people that work well with you and create synergy, synergy between it.
Absolutely.
I mean, whatever the future brings for you, it brings for you. But right now, and for the last 2 years, like, this has been, your life. So
yeah.
I see something amazing, something really cool and special there, that I like that story.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a great story.
Because you didn't come from the plumbing, HVAC, home services, like nothing, no training. You just came from being a videographer, and look at that. And here you are. And so now you're in charge of all this stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all stuff that, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for, Doug being willing to coach me and train me. And, obviously, it took a lot of sacrifice and a lot of effort on my end as well. But yeah, you're right. Like, I never thought I would be involved in the plumbing and HVAC space, whatsoever. And I think it's really cool to kind of look back and think, because kind of what we're training on is changing a lot of the stereotypes that people have about plumbers and HVAC and blue collar workers.
Sure.
And not just, we're trying to provide the tools that these guys can use to improve their own lives, improve their own relationships, their own listening skills, communication skills, all of that stuff. And, when I first joined with Doug, kind of like that story, alludes to, like, I didn't have any kind of idea of what shooting plumbing videos meant. And I kind of had a negative, light on that whole thing. I'm like, what am I doing shooting plumbing videos? I'm shooting like $10,000 weddings in Aspen, right?
Yeah.
And now looking back on it, just after having, so many conversations with contractors, business owners in this space, all the CSRs, my whole perspective has totally changed.
Yes, it changes that dichotomy, because I came into the plumbing HVAC world from outside the industry 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would have, that's a dirty place, and you don't realize it. You're like, wow, this is a really cool world. What's the most interesting experience you've had so far? Like something that, and I'm not talking about like, I've had such an interesting perspective. I mean, like, what's a specific, actually, I didn't get a chance to ask Doug this, but I asked this on every single podcast.
Okay.
What is one experience with a customer? In your case, maybe it's a call center, customer, or maybe it's somebody who's training from you guys. It could be a wedding. We can go backwards.
Sure. that
lives with you, that it moved you to a point where you go through your day and you always remember that experience or that moment.
Yeah. I actually have one that comes straight to mind. There's a technician in one of the first events that I ever did it was a regional Denver event. This was probably, do I need to get a little closer?
No, you're good. No noise here.
It was in December of 2022. So I'd come on October. So this was my very first live event.
Couple months later. Yep.
Yep. And I've since been to 20 live events. So a lot has changed, but there's a company from Maine that we still have a great relationship with and work with. And I think they had heard about Doug and us from the Tampa event. And so we had this regional event. This was a regional tech event, I believe. We do CSR tech and sales. So this was our tech event. And so they're in Maine, we're in Colorado. and it's a husband and wife team that own this company, and they were really, really excited about coming. But the wife, there was some medical condition that didn't allow her to fly. And so they were like, all right, we're going to have to get in a car and drive. And that drive, I think it's like almost 30 hours.
Wow.
They made it. I mean, it was a long drive.
Yeah.
And right at the beginning of the drive, they had a conversation, and they were in the car, and their business was struggling. They were having a really difficult time getting through things. They have 3 kids, and they had just had a conversation about getting a divorce. And this was right, like literally prior to getting into the car and driving 30 hours together to the event.
Wow.
And Doug, he'll always share that he's really, really into creating those meaningful relationships. And so he'd been talking with them before that. And he's not like a marriage counselor or any of that, but he's a great guy that's willing to have like good and tough conversations. Like we all have friends that are willing to say the things that aren't comfortable. And so he had some conversations with them, and but we didn't know about the divorce happening, the conversation happening right at the start of this car ride. So 30 hours later, they get to the event, and you can feel that there's some tenseness in the air, as you can imagine. And like that event, I believe we started even earlier. I think we were at 7 a.m. That's typically when we'll start our own regional events. And so they come in, and the energy is just like tough.
You can feel it. Yeah.
You can feel it.
Okay.
And as we continue to go through the event, one of the first things last things of day one is we'll have a personal vision statement and a legacy statement exercise, where we literally have everyone sit down. There's pages within this big workbook. I don't know where they are off the top of my head, but here we go. Here's like the legacy statement and the long-term goals.
Sure.
And we have a whole exercise where we have everyone sit down. They write down their key role and their key person.
Right.
And then their legacy statement is in a scenario where, you've passed away or they're gone or something like that. Like, what do you want that person to say about you?
Like at your funeral. Sure.
At your funeral. Exactly.
Yeah.
And Stephen Covey has a video that references this, the 80th birthday.
Sure.
And we'll play that. But it's a really powerful exercise, and we put on music that really just like gets you in the zone and focused. And then the next day after we do that legacy, I mean, that literally ends the day. So people leave with that on their mind. We ask them to continue working on it and thinking about it. And then the next day we're going to say, we're going to open it up to the room and see if anybody's willing to share what their legacy statement is. And we're never going to force someone to do that, because it really is such a personal thing. And anyways, the next day rolls around, and they both come in, and we notice they're sitting a little closer to each other, and like, okay, I'm interested. And so we open it up to the room, because, we really believe that, if you say something in front of a crowd of people or, close friend,
something
that's really
solidifies
going to get you to follow through.
Sure.
And so we open it up to the crowd, and the two of them walked up together to share their legacy statements, and they each wrote about each other, and they both wrote that they're acknowledging that, there's some mistakes that they made in the relationship, that there's things they want to change, but that they like love each other still. And they essentially renewed their vows in front of a room like the one that you're seeing.
Wow.
In front of the entire audience.
Wow.
Everybody was in
just think
tears.
about that. Just a little exercise like
Yeah.
this. Like, it's just so.
I think about it all the time.
Wow.
And it's like renewing your vows in front of a room full of strangers at a technician event.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
So that is awesome. And I've actually seen that like one or two other times, not as powerful as that,
Sure.
because that's a couple, but like people who I went to this event through another training organization, and at the end, of the event, there was these people had been doing contracting for 20, 30, 40 years. And they were crying their eyes out because they were like, they couldn't like whatever was stuck became unstuck.
Yeah.
Perspective is, this is why I love this industry too, because, and I love training. I've done a ton of sales training, a ton of training. I love to see the light bulbs go off. It brings me such joy. I think more than anything in the world. Like, truthfully, man, I mean, yeah, it's called Sales Podcast. Like, bro, for me, I could go back into sales and never worry about anybody else ever again but me. And that's it. I could do it.
Yeah.
I don't have to be in leadership. I don't have to manage people. You don't have to do that. But there's something like wrong with my wiring, or maybe right with my wiring. That like I totally get it. And like when I crave that light bulb going off. And like when you've seen the light bulb go off and then it turns your heart, oh my gosh, it's like the best. It's incredible feeling. I'll say feeling, and it just lives with you. So
yeah,
dude, that's probably like out of like episode 30 now. More. That's probably the coolest one that I've heard. I've heard a lot of these stories where somebody's shed light on an experience that lived with them. Like I'm a little choked up thinking about this right now because I think that's just remarkable that just an exercise like this and sometimes perspective. Anyway, dude, 100%. Dude, thank you for sharing, man.
Yeah, man.
Dude, I totally appreciate it. Bro, so anything else you want to say about yourself, man? Anything you want to share about your personal life, your experiences, any meaningful things that have happened to you in this journey you're on here?
Yeah, I mean,
you got like a couple minutes left.
Couple minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know, I've learned so much over the last couple of years working with Doug, and you know, everything that he says, he's to me, what makes him different is that he practices what he preaches.
Yeah. He's actually boots on the ground, which is crazy.
He is
like at this stage where he's at. I would imagine that he would assign the trainings, but he's doing all the trainings, which is crazy.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean,
what's the number one lesson that you've learned? There's one, like if you had a point with one thing that you said, like, okay, I learned this, like in the last couple of years, that is like a light bulb moment.
I think probably the biggest thing that I've learned is the importance of being prepared, and the importance of, and that's really a large, you know, it encompasses a lot of things, but the mentality that you need to have, you know, going into like a live event, or even something as simple as like a sales meeting, right? Like sitting down, really focusing. And a huge part of Doug's training and really kind of what I'm all about now is, I mean, he's listening to podcasts, books, all of that, getting his mind consistently right. Because as business owners, there's a lot of stress happening. There's things happening. They never stop happening. And it's so easy to fall into that black hole where you start to feel the stress, where you start to feel overwhelmed. You start to maybe even question, you know, am I doing what I should be doing? And the way that he's combat that, and that has helped me combat that, is constantly listening to books, listening to podcasts that are just, you know, sharing things that are, you know, building your mind in the right way. They're not like, you're not doom scrolling on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
It's creating the right pathways.
Exactly. Sure. And I think for me, you know, I'm a relatively young guy, and I've been into personal development, but I've never really been into it like I am now. And it's one of those things that it's hard to start when you don't need it. And I've gotten to the point where I've just integrated it in my life so easily. Like I'm listening to at least an hour a day of personal development. Like I do, you know, a good amount of driving.
Sure.
And that's when I'm doing it, you know, and it's so easy to just plug it in there, start listening to the right things.
Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's totally just like trickled down into every part of my life. Like it's not even just listening and the content of the books. It's the practice of consistently doing it.
Yeah. Part of the part of like being a social person and being somebody that like is continuously trying to learn things. I try to surround myself with people that are like that. When you work in an environment where you don't have people that want to help themselves, it does become actually very difficult. So hopefully what you can do is you can influence people. Okay, there's something wrong with the camera, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Dude. Awesome. Appreciate you. I appreciate Doug. I'm gonna sign off here, guys. A couple episodes. Like I said, I got a bunch of good episodes coming up here, and Doug's actually coming on for like a whole hour to 90-minute situation in the next week or so. So very excited. I actually really thank you for having me here, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye.